So now today it says the Shebar Shawi Chu Chu. So Shebar Shaw means to know, the 10 things to be known, the 10 Dharma or the advice to be known. So here first it says Chi Nama Tuban Dube Deme Shebarsha. So since external appearances are confusion, know them to be unreal. So now Chi means outer, then Nama means the one's here it says appearances. So Turba means something that is not real, something that is not real, kind of illusion, something like illusion. So here it says one must understand that everything that one experiences out there, it is nothing but one's one's illusion. So understanding that it is out there, understanding nothing is a self-sustainable solid thing. It's important to know. So this is it is very easy to understand. For example, let's say beauty. So let's say for a person, so if let's say we say somebody a beautiful person, so if this beauty on that particular person is fixed, a real thing, then everybody should find that particular person beautiful. Everybody should see as the same, but it is not. I might find the person beautiful, you might not find it so beautiful. Someone might find it, not at all beautiful. So that way, beauty in itself, on that person is, not a kind of a solid, substantial thing. It depends on our perception. So that way, it is quite clear, that it is one's perception. For example, let's say Tibetan tea, which is very famous, the butter tea. Tibetans love this butter tea. So they put more butter, more salt, lots of, they shake a lot, mix it, and then drink it in style. But when first, people from the West come to the monasteries and they are given this butter tea with great kind of, what do you say, with lots of warmth and lots of, but when they first drink it, they cannot drink. They say they feel kind of, how do you say, it makes you feel sick, drinking that. Because the idea of tea is not that. Idea of tea here is maybe in a cup, have boil water, then put some tea leaves, soak it, and then so that way the tea here is different from there. Then put some sugar, so the idea is totally different. So when you get that kind of tea, it is not able to accept, or the taste is different. So that way, if a tea has to be, a tea in Tibetan tea has to be that way, then it should be for everybody should like that. But it is not. Each individual depending on one's perception. So that way, here, then everything that is out there, chi and outer appearances, everything is but one's perception. So not grasping onto them too tight as a reality is important. For example, the mobile phones, first when it came out like a brick size, right, a big one. Then people thought smaller is better, it kept shrinking smaller and smaller and smaller. One time they had a mobile phone like a pen drive size, I think there was, and I saw that. And then again after that, it started coming bigger and bigger and bigger. Now again the big ones are more expensive, right? The bigger the mobile phone, the better it's supposed to be. Again, now I think there's a new one of Apple, which is again going back to smaller. So everything changing like this. So if big was better, it should have been better big all the time. If small was better, it should have been small all the time. But it changes according to one's perception. So out there, there's nothing as a solid, kind of grasping onto that solid thing out there. So everything is just one's illusion.
Und dann bringt er ein weiteres Beispiel an von Handys. Und sagt
like you like Nikon, I like Canon. So it's the same. I take same picture, same color, but just because my perception thinks Canon takes better picture and color, whereas he thinks is better Nikon. So it's that. It's just one's perception. Yeah. For example, the mobile phones, first when it came out like a brick size, right, a big one. Then people thought smaller is better, it kept shrinking smaller and smaller and smaller. One time they had a mobile phone like a pen drive size, I think there was, and I saw that. And then again after that, it started coming bigger and bigger and bigger. Now again the big ones are more expensive, right? The bigger the mobile phone, the better it's supposed to be. Again, now I think there's a new one of Apple, which is again going back to smaller. So everything changing like this. So if big was better, it should have been better big all the time. If small was better, it should have been small all the time. But it changes according to one's perception. So out there, there's nothing as a solid, kind of grasping onto that solid thing out there. So everything is just one's illusion. Like you like Nikon, I like Canon. So it's the same. I take same picture, same color, but just because my perception thinks Canon takes better picture and color, whereas he thinks is better Nikon. So it's that. It's just one's perception. Yeah. So we understand this well, then we will be able to, even practically, we will be able to enjoy everything, yet not have so much attachment to them. Because we know, it is just one's perception. So when it is there, you will enjoy it. When it is not there, you will understand. So important to understand this.
Und wenn wir das richtig verstehen, dann können wir alles wirklich genießen und dann haben wir nicht so viel angefangene Dinge, weil wir einfach verstehen, dass alles uns eigenen Wahrnehmung unterliegt.
Now next one, Nam Gisenni Damit und du Betomber Shepsha. Since the internal mind itself is without a self, know to be empty. So now the one that perceives, so-called the mind. So that also here it says it's free from kind of a self, solid self existence. So therefore, one should know that is also empty. So empty here doesn't mean like a glass empty, empty of water, that kind of empty. Here, when you say, Tomba is Tomba Ni, which is, we also call it the great emptiness, which means limitless, which is beyond a thing of empty or solid. So that kind of empty, emptiness. So the one which perceives all this, and that is why we are able to perceive, because the mind is that kind of empty, and because it is that kind of limitless, limitless, it has that nature of limitless, potential, then we can perceive everything to be anything, can perceive so many things. So because it is empty of limitation, limited solidity. So therefore, here it says, Nam Gisem Semni, that one which perceives it, all those, also is empty of such solid nature. So, for example, so there are many practices on this. Like meditation on seeing, whether the mind is solid, whether it has any shape, whether it has any color, where it is, whether it is in your heart direction, whether it is in people. Some people might say my mind is here. Some people might say my mind is here. So where is it? So if you keep that way looking into it, you will not find anywhere where the mind is. You will not find it. But if you say it is not there, then who is saying it is not there? So it is. There's someone who's saying that mind is there. So that way it is beyond thing like there or not there. So that is limitless potential. It is limitless. That is called Tongban. So to recognize this, then through words, that way you can understand, but it's not able to. You cannot truly realize this. In order to realize this, then meditation is the only method. So that is why meditation on one's nature of mind is very important. Through that, then one recognizes the nature of one's mind. So that is why meditation is the ultimate practice. Now, the outer, outer existence that we see around, and then that we have come to know is non-substantial or solid existence. Then the one which perceives that the mind itself is also free of such solid substantial thing. Now the things, the third one, namdo means one's thoughts that arise, whether good, bad, what, like, dislike, all that kind of thoughts. Namdo, all those are also conditioned. Depend on all those are conditioned. All those depend on many factors. So therefore, one must understand that also. That all those understanding of good, bad, happy, suffering, all these are also just subject to conditions. So conditions, depending on the condition, it changes. So that is how. And then let's say some, the Europeans love sun, right? You like to go on the beach. You like to have your car, the roof to be open in the sun. You enjoy the sun. But the Asians, they are totally afraid of sun. You see them, the Asians always wearing a big cap, always hidden under umbrella. They cannot think of going out in the sun because they're so afraid of the sun. So it's one's perception that way. So this is what it means. So it depends on so many conditions and all that. So the third one, which says parjinamto, changes to since the thought is thought in between arise conditionally, know them to be adventitious. Now the next is parjin jumui luma dujisu dobe mitavashi prasha. So since the body and speech composed of the elements are composite, know them to be impermanent. So this is impermanence. So we know that our body is made of elements like the fire, water, earth, etc. 5 elements. So therefore, since it is a collection of something, made of something, then it is impermanent. It is impermanent. It is that anything that is built will dissipate one day. Anything that is collected will what do you say? Anything that has been put together will fall apart. Anything that goes up will come down. So that is impermanence. So that is why anything that is born will die. So the day we are born, that is the biggest example, and that is the biggest proof that we will die. But there's nothing to be afraid, because it is stupid. Actually, people don't like to think of death or afraid of death because you don't understand enough. You don't understand the reality. That is why you are afraid of it. If you understand the reality of what it is, there's nothing to be afraid of it. Like Milarepa said, he went under the mountains fearing death. But after his practice realization, now he is no more afraid of death because he's overcome. He overcome death of birth. So that is how, if we understand, if we when we don't understand anything, then we are ignorant, then we are afraid. But when we understand, we are no more afraid of it. So here, basically, it is talking about impermanence. Now, next, Simjenji dedu tangji lele chungwe lendre mulu worship sha. So since all the pleasure and suffering of sentient beings arise from karma, know the results of action to be unfailing. So here it is talking about the karma cause and effect. So here it says karma is something that is cannot be avoided. So if one performs virtuous action or good action, then the result is always there, always a positive result. If one performs negative or non-virtuous action, then the result is negative. One cannot avoid that. So one cannot have a non-virtuous action and then have no result or have positive result. So that is the law of karma. So here it says Semjinji Dedu. Semjin means all beings. Dedu means happiness or suffering. Everything depends on one's own action. So as I last time I told you the activity and the mental defilements. So through strong mental afflictions, negative action, if one does strong negative action, then one will experience lots of suffering. If one through less kind of mental affliction, if one does virtuous action or that way is more mindful, then one will experience more happy moments. So that way it totally depends. So it depends on one's action. And then, so for example, one simple example is so each individual, it depends that way. Otherwise, everything should be the same. If it doesn't depend on one's action, if there's no cause and condition, then it should be same for everybody. For example, from the same parent, father and mother. Let's say there's twins. Let's say okay, so forget about just two children, but twins. Twins look quite alike. So, but even amongst the twins, they have so much similarity that everything should be the same. But it is not. Two twins also, they will have different way of thinking, different preferences. So all different. Why? Because each individual's karma. Depending on each individual's cause and condition, then it depending difference. So that is how one proof. Again, there's one story that in one of the life history of Buddha. That a long time back there was the one person who later on became one of the Sangha of the Buddha. This person was to look at, he was very, very, ugly, very, in fact they say beyond description. So he was very, maybe very scary looking, or very, very disgusting to look at like this. So when they used to go for begging, for food, so when they used to go, then everybody used to be afraid of this person. Everybody used to get disgusted with this person and not come forward, near this person. So the other friends, the other monks, then told Buddha that when they go like this group, then nobody come to offer because food, because he's so people find it so disgusting to look at. Then so he was asked to stay back. Instead of going for food begging, he was asked to stay back in his place, and then the rest would go for begging, and then they would bring food, and then they would share. So that way, so he was made to stay back. And then when he was made to stay back, then he had nothing to do. Everyone was out, so he's alone sitting doing nothing. Then he used to, but this person used to have a beautiful voice, just unimaginably beautiful voice. So he used to be inside his house, and then he used to read, chant the sutra with such beautiful tune. He used to chant, and the moment people hear his voice, they would get enchanted with this voice. everybody outside used to develop so much of devotion, so much of happiness, so much of great happy emotions just hearing this voice. So that way he was inside the house, always chanting like this. Then one day, the king of this place, he was passing by to another place. And then when he was passing through this place, then he heard this, the voice, such a beautiful voice chanting the sutra, in such melody. And even the horses and elephants stood still, refused to move because they were so enchanted by the voice. Then the king wanted to, know who this is. So the king came out and told, that I want to see this person, call him. So the other monk said, that cannot be done. You should not see this person. It is, you cannot see. Then the king is a powerful king, so he said, no, I have to, I want to see this. Who is this? Such a beautiful, singer, who can turn people's, emotion into such happiness. Then they said, no, Buddha has instructed nobody, should see. But the king, then he went to ask Buddha, for permission to see. Then, of course, being the king, then Buddha said, you cannot stop. So Buddha warned him, but he still, wanted to see. And he was, allowed to see. And when he saw this person, he got such a shock, because this person is so, to look at was such a sight, such an unpleasant sight. Then the king asked Buddha, why is it, there's such a, such a contrast, between this, why such things happen. Then the Buddha told him, about his karma. Buddha said that this person, in one of his previous lifetimes, and then he was a, he was a carpenter, and at that place, one, I guess one of the, rich person, I think a rich person, was building a very sacred, very precious stupa, a big stupa, and this person was very particular about everything. So he had many, people, carpenters working for this. And then he was so particular that each and every detail he wanted, beautiful. And then this person who was a carpenter at that time, he was so frustrated, always he used to, kind of wish ill, bad wishes, saying, why should they, why spend so much time, effort on building this? It's a waste of time, it's a waste of effort. So he used to always complain this way, all the time, complaining, all the time making fuss, and then wishing ill for this, And then, but anyways, he had to do because it was his job and he was a carpenter. So finally, when this stupa finished, it turned out to be such a beautiful stupa, because it was, of course, made with perfection, each and every detail. So when it finished, it was so beautiful. Then this person, carpenter, he also thought, really, it really turned out such a beautiful thing. He rejoiced for this for a moment. And then he made a bell, he made a beautiful bell and then put the bell on the stupa, right on top so that the wind would, ring the bell, up there. So that way, so because of this, this kind of karma, Buddha said, because he had so much, to doing such a virtuous action, but he was not, he had such negative thought. So because of this, karma, he had such appearance, bad appearance. But because at the end he rejoiced and then put a bell there, because of that karma, then he enjoyed such a beautiful voice. So it is it is a karma cause, a story of karma cause. So like this, so there are many stories. Of karma cause and effect. So since karma cause and effect is very important, so another story. so once there was again, let's say, one time there was a kingdom, in India, and then in this kingdom the king had hundreds of wives. So normally kings have many wives, right? So maybe not hundreds, maybe, but he had many wives. And they were all, kind of, but I think they were, some kings had many. So that way, they, but these queens were all, kind of, they had attained certain level of realization, like arhat realization. So one day the king, he was going out for his duty. So then he had one of his ministers. He ordered his minister to look after all of them and whatever they needs to fulfill the need. And then he kept one minister, and then he went out of the kingdom. So then the minister did not like virtuous, Dharma activity and like this. He did not like. He was against all this spirituality. But the queens, all of them were very, that way, always offering to, Buddha, always doing like this activity, a virtuous activity like this. So, of course, being the queen, so this minister asked them, what would you want to please, let him know, and he would get them for them. So the queens told him to collect, there's certain leaf, where you write olden days, on the leaf, on the bark, and on the leaf you write, instead of papers. There was no paper at that time. So that kind of material, they asked him to collect and then get oil, so that you mix oil with, the ink to create, writing. So like this oil and all this materials to collect. So the minister said, okay, he went. Then he created lots of, these barks, under the, palace. He piled a lot of them with lots of oil, and then he burnt it up. And then he burnt it up, and he was burning. He wanted to kill all of them, because they were all too much into the Dharma, which he didn't like. So he was going to kill all of them. So he was burning. And then at that time, all these queens, they knew they had reached the higher realization, so they could kind of gravitate. They knew they could, so they were not afraid. So they could gravitate even if the house was burning. But amongst them, there was one queen who did not have this special power. So she somehow managed through the back door, or through you have these drainage. So she sneaked herself out through the drainage out of the palace that way. She managed to run out. But the rest of the queens, they knew they could levitate, so they were not afraid. They gravitated in the space that way. So the house was burning downstairs. But after some time, after a certain degree of levitation, suddenly all of them, fell down. All of them fell and burnt, and all of them died. All of them burnt in the burning house and died. So later on, they asked, how is this possible? Because they have all, attained some kind of realization. Then how come this could happen? Then, of course, Buddha said, and this is because, again, same karma causes, right? So in one of the previous lifetimes, again, they were all, like small children playing, and then they found in one place arhat, meditating. They meditate for hundreds and hundreds of years, go into meditation. Like inside the forest, inside the mountain, inside the rock like this. They found like this one monk meditating, and then these children all playing. They were poking, trying to kind of. And they said, let's bring wood and burn him up. Because he's just meditating, not like this. For hundreds of years, when they stay there, they look like statues. So like this. So they said, let's burn him up. And then out of there, one child said, let's not do like that. He's a monk, meditating. We must respect him. We shouldn't disturb. Let's not do. But the rest of the children did not listen. They were playing and they poked him. They, kind of hit him, burnt him like this. So they burned this, monk up. So because of this, karma, so the rest of the queens were those other children, and the one who tried to protect, was that one who managed to escape. So that way, so these are called the cause and condition. The cause and condition, karma, cause and condition. So that way, one must understand, all the happiness or sufferings of a being is dependent on one's action. So if you want a happy tomorrow, you have to accumulate the cause for that happiness today. Now, next is Dunghal Ngenjungki Jurudu Gewe Shenyan Shebarsha. since suffering is a cause of renunciation, know it to be a teacher. Okay. Since suffering is a cause of renunciation, know it to be a teacher. Here it says, suffering, any difficulty one faces, all those become condition. All those become condition for renunciation, for working towards liberation. For being free from the samsaric kind of suffering, samsaric limitation. So therefore, suffering is a kind of it is one must know that suffering is something like one's teacher, dharmic teacher, a Dharma teacher, because it shows us that until and unless we overcome until and unless we attain the complete realization, and until and unless we are free from the samsara, then all this suffering will, one cannot overcome, one cannot achieve this complete happiness. Therefore, it is a reminder to us. So when we suffer, then we want to get over this. So when we want to get over this, we look for solution to get over this. We look for why I'm suffering. Then how to overcome this suffering. So that is why then we want to renounce from this. So that is why it says it is like a teacher to us. So it is very important to understand this. So that is why again and again it keeps saying, yesterday also, today also. If we understand this, then it makes us mindful. It will make us strong from within. People, if we don't understand this well, then when something happened to us, suffering, then we cannot accept this. So when we cannot accept this, then we create all kind of confusion, and then we go into depression. Go into depression, go into all this, then taking your own life, hurting other people. All this happens because of this. But if you understand this well, then people who understand this well, when you suffer, then you will see, what is the cause of suffering. So when you look into the cause of suffering, then you will see, that your own mental afflictions are the root cause to all these sufferings. So you will work towards, purifying those mental afflictions, and then towards the path of liberation. So that is how, then one becomes strong. Then the next is Dechi Kurvitsawar Dube Shincha Dudu Shepcha. So it says, since pleasure and comfort are the root of samsara, no craving and attachment to be mara. So here it's talking about the samsaric pleasures. So we always crave for samsaric pleasures. So one must, we are always craving for these samsaric pleasures and have so much attachment towards these samsaric pleasures. So one must know that all those are but the true, true mara. Mara means one who harms you. So one who harms you are those cravings, are those attachments that one has, towards all these worldly pleasure. Not understanding that the more you, the more you fulfill those cravings, the more you get. So wanting always, these samsaric pleasure for yourself, always wanting. So that is the true, cause of suffering for you. They are the true cause of harm for you. So therefore, understanding this and practicing, practicing contentment, practicing, less self-grasping, less of I, and more of you. That is important. So now next, Dunzi Chuji Gajen de Dube Sunam Parchi Shepherd. So since distractions are conditions unconducive to the accumulation of merit, know them to be obstacles. So distractions, distractions of various kinds, all kinds of distractions which distract one from practice, from virtuous activity, etc. So anything that distracts one from such, and then one must know that those are the obstacle to one's liberation, obstacle to one's improvement. So therefore, and it obstructs one from accumulation of merit, or obstructs one from the further development of oneself. Therefore, understanding this, understanding this and to be aware and mindful of that is very important. There's when one goes into serious retreat, one's masters always give you many advice. And one very correct advice is, they say when you are in a retreat, then you are completely in retreat. So you don't have you have a lot of time to practice, contemplate, so not much distraction. But at that time, if one is not careful, then all kind of things keep coming in your mind. So things which you never thought of will keep coming. So the minute you sit down practicing, meditating, instead of, if you're not careful, instead of meditating, you will be wondering, around you will see many things. You will want to do this, you will want to do that, you will start planning this, you will start planning that. So one person also said, the best time to, plan is when you sit down to do your practice. Because at that time then you are trying to practice, but if you are not mindful, then your mind wanders around. So it sees all sorts of things, it plans all sorts of things. Oh, I need this here, I need to get something for this place, I want to design this like this, I want to design that like that. So these things will come, instead of your practice, then all these, all these meaningless thoughts come, if you're not careful, so while practicing. Normally when we just sit around, you will not think, we don't think, we are just talking, sitting, we are not aware of those things. But the minute you sit quietly there, wanting to practice, suddenly all these unnecessary thoughts will start coming. I want to eat this, I want to make this kind of food, I want to build this, that. These kind of thoughts come when you are practicing if you are not careful. So these are all the kind of attractions. So if one is not careful, then they are the obstacles to one's Dharma practice or one's meaningful practice of meaningful. So one must be careful with that. So this is all through experience. So when we used to do retreats, especially there are certain retreats where you cannot eat this, you cannot eat that, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. In the some especially in the Chaju and Juju, so the tantras, the lower two tantra, Chaju and Juju. So there are many. It is more kind of action oriented. So you cannot do this, you cannot do that, you cannot eat this, you cannot eat that. So when you do practice on those things, you are limiting yourself to many things. Then you not careful. Sometimes you think, okay, after my retreat, I'm going to eat this. I'm going to cook this and eat, and all this. Sometimes you think. But after finishing the retreat, you don't even think of those things. You don't even think of cooking those. So it's very funny. It's very interesting. So one must be very careful, mindful all the time. Now the next is Parche Gejorji Kumar Dube Dragik Namar Shebercha. Again, same. He's saying, since obstacles are exhortations for the virtues, no enemies and obstructors to be your guru. So basically, same. Parche is obstacles. Then Gejur Chikulma means accumulation of virtue. So therefore, it says the obstacles are like one's friend or Dharma teacher, because it it makes one accumulate virtuous merit during such times. So when you are afraid, when you are in difficult times, then only you think of the Dharma. When we are happy, we don't think of Dharma. When we have some problem, then we think of Dharma. We think of someone up there. So all this. So here it says that is why all these obstacles are actually catalysts to one's practice. Now, then the next is Tuan Tambar Chu Tamje Rangji member Dubbe Kanayan Yambani Shebarsha. Since in absolute truth all things are without a nature, know everything to be the same. Okay. So here again the same, it says Tuan Tambar, ultimately all Dharma, it's non-dual. Everything in the Dhammakaya. So therefore, understanding this is important. So here, like there's a story of Milarepa. When Milarepa's one of his students, the Rechungpa, was sent to India to learn Dharma. So he went to India to learn Dharma, and instead of learning the more meaningful Dharma, he learned all the magic, the Dharma through which you could do many things, many magical things. So he learned those kind of tricks and Dharma, and then he perfected them. And then after that, then he had, of course, when you can do many things which others cannot do, then if you are not careful, you become quite proud. So he became quite proud actually. He thought he was quite powerful after all that. So then on his way back to Tibet, then Milarepa came to a certain point to receive him. Then they sat together, and then Milarepa asked him, okay, so what have you brought from India? What Dharma have you brought from India? What did you learn? Then when Milarepa checked out, he was very disappointed, because instead of learning the proper Dharma, through which is meaningful, he learned, all he saw was these kind of, tricks that he had learned. So then, Milarepa, told him, okay, go find some, tea or wood or something like that to make the tea. And then meanwhile, Milarepa burnt up all those texts. So Rechungpa was very upset and angry. Milarepa was his teacher, but he was so angry at Milarepa that he lost his temper and all that, to Milarepa. So then, so he was very angry and fight with Milarepa. Then Milarepa, seeing this, then wanted to teach him a lesson. So Milarepa, through his miracle, created hailstorm. He created hailstorm, and then in Tibet, some places all plain, grassland. So no tree around. So there was no tree. So in that a hailstorm, then suddenly Rechungpa, everyone getting beaten with the hailstorm. Some hailstorms are that big. So it's really painful. If not careful, you can be killed also with these hailstorms. So Milarepa nowhere to be seen. And Rechungpa suffering in the hailstorm. Then he's looking around, and suddenly he hears Milarepa saying, if you are same as me, come inside. It's very comfortable in here. Why don't you come inside? Then he's looking around, he cannot see him around. Then he tries to figure out through the sound, and then the sound is coming from a yak's horn, a dead yak's horn. So when he looks inside this dead yak horn, he sees Milarepa inside there, very comfortably sitting. And then when he looks at Milarepa hasn't become smaller. The yak horn hasn't become bigger. Yet Milarepa fits inside this. He can see, that. And then Milarepa saying, if you have, kind of realized the nature, of everything. If you are same as me, come inside. Come inside. Let's enjoy inside. It's very, comfortable in here. And Rechungpa could not do that, because he had only learned the trick, these worldly tricks, but not still perfected the, ultimate nature of everything. So this is what it means. So everything is one's perception, illusion. So the non-dual state of everything. So because Milarepa had, kind of realized this, for him there was nothing as small or big, solid or non-solid. Everything he had perfected. Everything he had realized. But for Chungpa, still a solid thing was a solid, a small thing is a small, big thing is a big. So that is why some great enlightened master, we say, can just walk through the wall, because for them they have moved beyond the perception of a wall, a stone as a solid substance there. So there are stories of great masters walking on water. All these kind of stories are there. Levitating in the sky. So all these are out of these. So that is what it means here. So now those are the 10 things to know. 10 things to know. Now next is the Yamsunam Vichuchu. So the 10 things one must adopt or practice.
Das waren also die 10 Dinge, die wir wissen müssen. Jetzt kommen die 10 Dinge, die wir annehmen müssen.
So first one, it says Chubur Shune Michuji Churu Mijubar Chujin Yamsunam. So having entered the gate of Dharma, do not enter the herd-like concerns of people. Practice in accordance with Dharma. So here what it means is, once one has entered the path of Dharma, then one mustn't be carried away with Michu means worldly Dharma, worldly Dharma, such as like the how do you say, the worldly Dharma we are all quite good at, right? So always trying to please oneself. So to those who one has good connection, one likes, you try to protect them, you say nice things about them. To those who you don't like, who you feel are not good to you, then you criticize them, you try to put down on them. Then to those who are doing better than you, you want to be better than them, so try to put them down, you are trying to do better than them. Then if people don't recognize you, you are quite upset, you try to do things to make people recognize who you are. So, and then if you don't have much money, if people around you have more than you, then you are jealous. Then you try your best to overpower them, kind of be better than them. So like these things, so these are all the worldly Dharma, So trying to put down one's enemy, trying to kind of support those who are close, attached to you. So these kind of all these worldly dharmas, which connect with one's ego, all these. So these kind of things one must kind of abandon. One must try to stay away from. So one must practice the Dharma as Dharma. One must try to reduce them. It is difficult to straight away not have all of that. That is impossible. So we have to be practical. But slowly, gradually, we have to cut down on that. So that is important. Then now the next is Palpung Europe Stadtinstitut. So having abandoned your birthplace, do not establish yourself in human lands, practice without attachment. So, of course, again, here are different levels of practitioner. So the great practitioners like Milarepa and all, they completely abandoned samsaric life. He completely renounced from first from the worldly life to a more practitioner's life, and then finally even a normal a kind of practitioner's life into the mountains alone and practicing that way. So those are great practitioners of high level. So we have to be, as I said, practical. I see a lot of people who first come into the Dharma with so much motivation, so much interest, with so much kind of aspiration that they give up everything. They give up everything. They leave behind everything, thinking they don't need anything. And then they think they will go into the mountain or something like that. And have nothing. No belonging, nothing. it is a good aspiration, but you have to be practical, because we have to think of our own level. So then such people, after some time into the Dharma, then they cannot do this. Then after some time they have doubts in the Dharma. They think why they give up so much and still not seeing any result. Not seeing anything. Then after some time they are bored with all this. So then they, even if not careful, develop wrong view of the Dharma. They think Dharma is not kind of beneficial. It is so this way. They have wrong views about this, and then ultimately completely leave practicing the Dharma and this. So that is actually out of one's own fault. Not because the Dharma is unable to benefit you, but because you did not know how to practice the Dharma. You did not know how to follow the Dharma. So therefore, here, of course, the word-to-word meaning is Palpung means one's birthplace, because normally in one's birthplace, then one grew up in one's birthplace. So you know all the people there, all the area, everything. You have been busy in this area. So if you want to practice the Dharma, then you should leave this place, it says, because here everybody will distract you, everybody will disturb you. You have all your business there, all your your belongings there, so you are always tied down to all this. So when you leave this and go to another place, then you are free of all these attachments, all these kind of so it says then it says mule to so after leaving such a place, then it says not to go again to another place and again settle there, in another place where lots of people are there, settle there, so one should not do that, because again it will become like the same, the place that you left, you will create another place there, so which will again have lots of distractions, lots of obstacles, so so instead of doing that, one must go to a place where there's no attachments, no distractions, so that kind of thing. So of course the word-to-word meaning is this. But here what one must understand is, after entering the path of Dharma, and then one must kind of practice with some degree of discipline. Some degree of discipline. One must try to reduce one's attachment, craving for all the worldly or material pleasures. So one must have some kind of discipline in that sense. So maybe not completely, at this moment, but to some level. So supposing if you enjoy something, it doesn't mean you shouldn't enjoy it. Yes, if you have the karma, if you have the ability to enjoy it, enjoy it. But as a practitioner, you must understand that this is one's, kind of illusion. It is a relative thing. It is not the ultimate. So one mustn't be too strong attached to this. So when it is there, you enjoy. When it is not there, you are able to let it go. So that way. And then when it is able to share with everybody, you are able to share with everyone. So that way, then one will be less, kind of, there will be less attachment, less, more contentment, everything. So in this sense, then one can take this. So if one takes it in that sense, then at this level, it is easier to practice. Then next is Lama Thambatene Majal Pangde Kashinyam Sunam. So once relying upon a holy guru, abandon arrogance, practice in accordance with his or her instructions. So here Lama Thamba. So Lama, I told you yesterday, is one's guru. Lama means one above everything. So how does one become above everything? Then Thamba means the unmistaken, the best of all Lama. So once, as I said yesterday, one must examine one's Lama first, and then only go to the Lama. When one examines, the Lama must have certain qualities. For example, the Lama, most important is the Lama must have the living lineage. Without the living lineage, then it is very difficult. So there's no blessing of the lineage, there's no lineage. Then therefore, the living lineage, right from the Buddha's teaching until today, it should have, he should have the preserved living lineage. So coming down from master to student, so unbroken, uncontaminated. So that is important. And then second quality he must have is, he must have practice. He should be one who practices himself. So not just somebody who talks but no practice. He preaches to be, have loving kindness, compassion, but he harms everybody. He talks about, all the, dharmic things, but he does all the non-dharmic things. So there's no practice. So he should be an example of what he is teaching. So therefore he should have practice. And then the third is he must have his samaya. He must have his samaya with his guru. So his samaya, his vows should be intact. With his guru. So that is important. And then the fourth is he must have loving kindness, compassion. This is very important. Without loving kindness, compassion, how will he be able to benefit beings? So therefore, he should have the quality of loving kindness, compassion. Someone who has these qualities, and then one can take him to be one's Lama. So then, here it says, after taking someone to be one's Lama, after all these examination, then one must genuinely, 100% have devotion and practice what the Lama teaches you. Should not keep doubting all the time. So once the Lama has all these qualities, then if you keep doubting, we say our mind is impure. It is not pure yet. So we are trying to purify ourselves. So because of our our own level of state of our mind, then we perceive many things. So some things may be not correct. So if you depend on those and then create confusion, then you will always have confusion that way. So that way you will always go round and round. You will never free yourself. So it is important to once, after examining and after finding the right teacher, then to follow the teacher 100%. That is very important. So there are many stories, great, like Tilopa, Naropa, Marba, Milarepa, how they followed their master. The master tells them to jump off the cliff, they are ready to jump. And then the master tells them to do this, they are ready to do. And the master tells them to do that, they are ready to do. And they have no second doubt. It's not because they are stupid. It's not because they are. It's not blind faith. It is through great examination, through great understanding the quality of the master, they realize that their master is, how enlightened, and then after that, then follow the master. Once they have followed, they have very strong, devotion, then these things are possible. So therefore, it is very important to have that kind of stability. And that comes through devotion. And that comes through one's examination and understanding. Then the next is So having trained your mind through hearing and reflection, do not just teach, practice what you have learned. So, just in simple words, practice what you preach, right? So that is what it means, So it is saying one should listen, contemplate, and meditate on the teaching or the Dharma, Buddha's Dharma. So one must do that carefully, and then practice oneself, and not just teach without any experience in it. So that is very important. Because if one has no experience, if one has not practiced, then it is just an empty word, so it cannot benefit anybody. So therefore, to truly benefit others, then one has to practice first. One has to have some kind of insight or experience in it. Then one will be able to benefit others. Otherwise, it is like, example, like a deaf person blowing the conch shell or the trumpet. So he doesn't know what sound is coming out. He doesn't know what tune. So he has no idea of it. So he is blowing it, but he has no idea. So how will he be able to produce, melody? Because he doesn't know, what he's blowing. What sound is he blowing? So that way, one must practice. So here, one must kind of keep in mind the three stains, we call them. The three stains. One must avoid these three stains, which is number one. For example, is a very beautiful example given, like a teapot, a tea. So let's say there's a mug or a cup. So first of all, if the cup is put upside down, then no matter how much you pour tea on top of the cup, it's never going to be filled, because the cup is upside down. So in the same way, no matter how much Dharma you receive, if you are not going to, if you are not listening, if you are not trying to take in, then it's no use. It's not going to be of any beneficial. So one must listen to the Dharma first. The teaching, practice, anything. So one must listen carefully. Second stain is, for example, now even if the cup is upright, if the cup is if the cup is broken or has crack in it, then no matter how much tea you pour into the cup, the tea will always come out. It will never be filled, because it is already cracked. The water, the tea will flow out. So in the same way, even if you come, listen to Dharma teaching, attend Dharma classes, but if you don't, and even if you listen, but if you don't contemplate on it, even if you don't think on what you have learned, then it is like that. It will come from here and it will go. Because our mind, we say, our mind can retain only till certain, certain time. If we don't contemplate on it, we will forget. So therefore, one must contemplate on what one has, kind of learned. And then the third stain is, for example, now even if the cup is upright, even if the cup is, not broken, but if the cup is dirty, if it has like dirt inside the cup, or it has poison inside the cup, then even if you pour tea into the cup, and even if it can hold the tea, you cannot drink it. Because if you drink, it is dirty tea or it is poison tea, so you cannot drink. It is not going to help you. In fact, it will harm you. So in the same way, Dharma, you come to receive the Dharma, you listen to the Dharma, contemplate the Dharma, but if you are not careful, if you are filled with ego, jealousy, anger, these kind of conflicting emotions. So if you are not mindful about these, then the Dharma, you might know a lot of Dharma, but it is just from here. It is not from here. So just for your own fame, just for your own desires, just for your own advantage. So for all these purposes, then you teach the Dharma. So it is just acting. It is more harmful, in fact. So you are creating more harm than benefit. So it will harm yourself more. It will harm others more. So therefore, so one must always remember these three stains. Always try to be clear of these three stains, and then practice that way. So here, so it is. So here it says listening, contemplating. So practicing on that. Putting those in practice. Then practicing the Dharma yourself, rather than just empty words. That is important. Now, the next is so since all the pleasures and sufferings of when realization has arisen in you, do not be satisfied with it. Practice without distraction. So here, Tokpa is of course normally realization, but here it's talking about not complete realization. It's more like an experience, more like experience. So when one practices, then when one kind of experiences certain kind of experience or certain kind of realization, then one mustn't be satisfied with that and leave it at that. One must continue to practice, so that it will develop. Otherwise, you will go back to square one. Otherwise, it will disappear. So, for example, like now when one practices on the nature of mind, then after some time, one might get like glimpses of the nature of mind. One's nature of mind. One might experience, the nature of mind. But if one is if one is kind of not careful and just now, okay, proud, I know my nature of mind, and then forget it, then again it will go back, because it was just an experience, it is not realization. So the experience is just temporary. Again it will go back to square one. So one must always keep meditating on that. Then, for example, like loving kindness, compassion. So when one meditates or practices on the loving kindness, compassion, then one will develop some level of loving kindness, compassion through practices such as give and take practice, practices such as putting yourself into others' shoe, exchanging yourself with others. So that kind of practices, practices such as thinking of the limitless, mother sentient beings, their kindness to you, and then so that way thinking of their qualities, their kindness, then developing loving kindness, compassion towards all beings. So these are all various kinds of practices for loving kindness, compassion. So when one does these kind of meditation practice, then one will develop some kind of some level of loving kindness, compassion. So when you develop these loving kindness, compassion, then you think, okay, now I've developed loving kindness, compassion. So then you forget these practices and you think you have a lot of loving kindness, compassion. Then if you are not careful, slowly it will disappear, or it might, if you are not careful, it might also change into kind of a worldly, self, ego attached loving kindness, compassion. So therefore one must be careful all the time, and when such experiences arise, then be motivated by that and even more, practice even more. So that is important. Now the next is Nyamne Jola Chene Chosun Dunzila Minjumbar Member Nyamsuna. When practice has arisen within you, do not enter into the distractions of communities and practice. So that is also almost the same as the previous. Once some kind of insight has developed in you, then one mustn't waste time by going into the distraction, crowd, into the settlements where there's lots of crowd, where you could, if not careful, get carried away with many distractions. So one mustn't do that, and one must continue to practice in isolation. So one must continue to practice seriously.
Der nächste Punkt ist ja ähnlich dem vorhergegangenen, da es, wenn die Praxis in uns entsteht, dann sollten wir nicht hinaus in die Gemeinschaft gehen, sondern dabei bleiben zu praktizieren. Das heißt, wenn irgendeine Art von in uns, irgendeine Art von irgendwas erwächst, dann sollten wir das nicht verschwenden, sollten wir unsere Zeit nicht mit Ablenkungen verschwenden und in irgendwelche Ansiedlungen gehen und dort einfach davon hinweggetragen werden, sondern weiterhin damit fortfahren, in der Abgeschiedenheit ernsthaft zu praktizieren.
Then the next Kelangshin Tham Chene Gosum Pametum Metan Lapasum Nyamsalam. So having promised and committed yourself, do not be careless with your 3 gates, practice the 3 trainings. So here what it means is, once one has entered the path of Dharma, once one has committed committed to the path of Dharma, which is the path through which one can attain complete liberation, then one must be mindful, one must work hard, one must abide by certain discipline, so one can carry through the path. So here basically the discipline is, for example, one must maintain one's discipline, such as the 10 virtuous actions. One must try and abide by the 10 virtuous actions. One must try and not create the 10 non-virtuous actions, which we discussed yesterday. So one must try to involve those actions, virtuous actions, as much in our daily life. One must try to stay away from the non-virtuous actions as much in our daily life. So those, whatever possible. Then one must always be mindful of one's bodhicitta, because we want to attain a complete realization. So therefore bodhicitta is a must. So the thought of wanting to benefit all beings, the thought of wanting to benefit all beings, wanting to liberate all beings to the state of complete realization. So this is very important. So with that kind of a mental thought, so physical discipline, mental thought, and then one's samaya, with one's guru, with one's is very important. So the samaya with one's guru, samaya with one's lineage, those are very important. So keeping that in mind, then one practices. So that is the seventh important. Now next is Changju Chodo Sem Chene Randu Mijebar Chije Shindun Dunyam Sunam. So having generated the mind of supreme awakening, do not accomplish benefits for yourself. Perform all practice for the benefit of others. So always keeping that in mind. Once one has entered the path of Dharma, path to liberation, complete liberation, then one must always abide by the thought of bodhicitta. So even in the, let's say, even in the worldly kind of sense, in the materialistic world, this is kind of, to some extent, it is visible. For example, those who work for others always enjoy praise, always enjoy the love of others. Those who work for only self always doesn't get much. Nobody really cares for them. So that is the reality even in the just the in a samsaric world. For example, let's say the one who create the Apple phone, Apple product. A lot of people like the person who created this, and he created this thinking to make all the people's life easier, to make it simpler, more So with that kind of thought for all others, he thought of the lots of people through which he was able to create that. So which made a difference to a lot of people. So many people like him. But the person who created Samsung, I think, hates him. So that way, so he does not. It is not again 100% that way, as long as it is kind of materialistic. And somebody who then in another way, somebody who does lots of criminal activity for his or her own benefit, then nobody likes this person. Everyone wants this person to be put behind bar, or want to terminate this person like this. So when one works for himself, through selfish means, then nobody likes this. So even in a worldly, materialistic, sense, it works that way. So what is the need to say when we are working on a more kind of greater cause, which is the total liberation, the complete realization. So there, of course, we have to involve the entire, limitless sentient beings, create that kind of a motivation, that kind of a power to push us through, take us through this great, limitless path to achieve this limitless result. So therefore, that limitless, that powerful motivation is the bodhicitta. So without bodhicitta, we cannot attain enlightenment. So always abiding by this bodhicitta. The thought of wanting to benefit limitless beings, to liberate limitless beings from all suffering. So this is the bodhicitta. So one must abide by that. And the next is Haji Gorshu ne Gosum Thamal the Mijakal Chinkursum Dunyam Sunam. So having entered the gate of mantra, do not leave your three gates in the ordinary state. Practice cultivating them as three mandalas. So here it is talking about the mantrayana practice. And so here it says once one has entered the mantrayana practice, then one must abide by the the practice of the mantrayana, which is then one looks one always abides by the understanding of one's what do you say the surrounding everything as not impure world, but as the pure mandala of the enlightened beings, and then oneself and all beings as the pure enlightened deities, and not as impure who we are, and all the sound as the pure sound of the mantra, and not just impure sound that we hear. So that way, so these are the practice of the the mantrayana. So it says one must maintain those. Now the next is Jumbi Tusu Tume Sada Nikolwar Shinyan Tambi Shabdundu Katub Yamsana. So when one is while young, do not travel meaninglessly, practice austerities in the presence of a holy teacher. So it's saying not to waste time. When you are capable, when all your senses are workable, is working well, then especially here it says of course young. So at that time one shouldn't waste time. One shouldn't waste time by just traveling around. Lots of people love traveling, right? We like traveling. Lots of people work very hard throughout the year, collect money, and then at the end of the year we travel and finish up all that money, and then again come back next year work. So that way we do this. So here as a practitioner it says one shouldn't just waste time that way. More rather than doing that, one must practice seriously. Next to a spiritual master who can guide one through the path, and then without wasting any time, practice diligently. Now the next is Jumbi Tusu Tume Sada Nikolwar Shinyan Tambi Shabdundu Katub Yamsana. So when one is while young, do not travel meaninglessly, practice austerities in the presence of a holy teacher. So it's saying not to waste time. When you are capable, when all your senses are workable, is working well, then especially here it says of course young. So at that time one shouldn't waste time. One shouldn't waste time by just traveling around. Lots of people love traveling, right? We like traveling. Lots of people work very hard throughout the year, collect money, and then at the end of the year we travel and finish up all that money, and then again come back next year work. So that way we do this. So here as a practitioner it says one shouldn't just waste time that way. More rather than doing that, one must practice seriously. Next to a spiritual master who can guide one through the path, and then without wasting any time, practice diligently. So these are the 10 practices to kind of uphold or take. Okay. So we end the morning session here.